Welcome to the all-important clash from the final round of the Chennai Grandmasters 2023. We have Pentala Harikrishna with the white pieces taking on Gukesh. A handshake. And why this game is so important? Well, it's because if Gukesh manages to draw today or win, he would top the FIDE Circuit leaderboard, and that would be a huge movement for him towards his candidate spot. Hari opens the game with d4 and Gukesh responds back with d5. What opening is Gukesh going to choose? Because on one hand, a draw is enough to top the FIDE leaderboard, but a win would mean a clear first in this tournament because he's half a point ahead of the field. And he takes the pawn on c4. It's the queen's gambit accepted. So Gukesh is trying to be quite solid out of the opening, keeping the draw in hand. In the background you can see Arjun Erigaisi playing, and if Arjun manages to win today, then he catches up with Gukesh if he draws. And Hari on the other hand would be looking to beat Gukesh to get the first spot in the tournament as well. E3 played. Now this is a positional way to play this opening. Harikrishna would want to use his bishop and pick up the pawn. Pawn comes up to e6, and now Hari can simply snatch the pawn on c4, and that is what he does. He takes the pawn, and it's a common way to play. Gukesh plays a6. Now with this move you are taking control of the b5 square. Later you want to go b5, also push c5. Harikrishna castles, and I think it's time to strike in the center with the move c5. Yes, that's the way in which black plays here, and Hari now decides to take on c5. This opening is very poisonous. It was played by Vidit Gujarati against Predke in the last round of Isle of Man to score a win. With the white pieces, you can see there black lets white take the queen and also spoils his castling rights, but it doesn't really matter because the king will be well positioned on the e7 square. Hari comes back with the bishop on e2, and one of the main reasons is that you want to keep this square empty for your knight, and you are waiting how to develop. You can see Harikrishna gets his knight out to d2, and later on the knight can look at the a5, b6 and d6 squares. One of the bishop d7, he wants to put his bishop on b5 and trade it off. One of the important things to note in this opening is where this bishop goes. It's a key piece. Rook d1 played, and this is slightly unusual. b3 is the main move. Rook d1 has been played, and Gukesh, after quite some thought, nearly 17 minutes, plays rook c8. Why do I say this bishop is important? Because it is covering this weakened dark squares in the position, and if it moves away, let's say from this diagonal, then suddenly the bishop comes and gives a check. So Gukesh has to play carefully there, and he puts his bishop to b5. This is a good square that he's found. And now if you take here, then pawn takes would activate the rook down the a file, and that's the reason why Harikrishna blocks it with knight to c4. Now the knight jumps to d7. It's a good square. The knight is looking at the b6 square, controlling it. Bishop comes up to b2, and the bishop is on this wonderful long diagonal. So white has a small edge out of the opening, but nothing particularly spectacular. And knight b6 played here by Gukesh. He is hoping that after takes, he takes back with the bishop, and then more pieces get traded. Harikrishna brings his other knight to the center of the board. An excellent move here, and Gukesh now has to decide how to meet it. He takes the knight on c4. You can take with the pawn, but then it becomes isolated and the bishop can come to a4 and attack the rook. So it's important to take back with the knight, and that is exactly what Hari does. He takes on c4 with the knight, once again keeping an eye on these squares. Gukesh has to be careful. You know, these are the most difficult positions in such games. Wow, he takes on c4 and gives Harikrishna the bishop pair. That's a very bold decision. Why are such positions the toughest? Because nothing out of the ordinary is happening, but at the same time your opponent has this nagging edge which is very difficult to vanquish, you know. So Harikrishna is a master of such small advantages. Now g6 was played by Gukesh so that he can move the knight and the pawn is no longer hanging, and look at this move by Hari. He wants to pop out his bishop on f3 and attack the b7 pawn. That's his idea. The knight comes to d7, improving itself, and here the rook moves to the open file on c1. White's position is a picture of coordination. If you see, black goes bishop d6, and this is a smart idea by Gukesh. He's like, let's trade off a few pieces if we can, and so Hari goes f4, and maybe what Hari wanted is to stop a piece from coming to e5, but on the other hand he anyway wants to expand on the king side, and he so does that. Rook takes rook played by Gukesh, and now Harikrishna takes back. He has the open file, he has the bishop pair, he's expanded on the king side. This all looks very promising. a5, what a nice move by Gukesh. He wants to play a4 and create counterplay on the queen side. Hari says, nothing doing, I'm actually putting my bishop here, stopping your pawn from coming forward. Gukesh brings his knight with two ideas. One is to push the pawn to a4, the other is to trade it there with rook c8. g3 played. Maybe another possibility was to go g4 followed by h4. He plays g3, and now will Gukesh push his a pawn here? No, he's being very solid and being very careful. After all, a lot is on the line in this game, so he goes rook c8 and wants to trade it off. And Hari now decides to push his e pawn. This is a nice move by Harikrishna, because his king can now start coming up the board. He can slowly expand on the king side. Gukesh plays f6, a little circumspect move there, putting his pawn on f6, and it's time to bring your king in. Like the slow hand of death, Harikrishna is making his moves, and Gukesh needs to be very, very careful. Takes the rook, and now will Gukesh next push his pawn to e5? It might be a very risky move, because after the bishop takes here, and if pawn pushes to e5, thereafter takes, the position opens up, and that's not what you want for the bishop. So bishop c5 check played, and now if Hari plays here, then this would end in a kind of drawish position. The knight is equal to the bishop. That's the reason why Harikrishna moves his king up and keeps the bishop pair right now. Knight c8. This is a nice move. He wants to get his knight to d6, and Hari has to be careful on what he does next. One of the ways is to just simply start playing with g4, keep expanding on the king side. But Harikrishna makes a committal decision. He plays e5. With this, he takes away the square for the knight, but he's also committed his pawns, and generally you don't want to commit it too soon. Now Gukesh also pushes his pawn to f5, and now things have changed a bit, because if you trade the bishops now, which Hari seems likely that he will do, he's hovering his hand over the bishop. Yes, if you trade now, then suddenly this knight is very passive and the king can start entering this side. So clearly you shouldn't be trading here. Gukesh, with just 14 minutes on the clock, has a difficult decision to make, but he makes the right choice. He plays his pawn to b6. Fantastic move. Now why is this fantastic? Is because after Hari takes, you have isolated both of your pawns here, but the knight will settle on this beautiful square here and will control all the other squares in the position. Hari puts his king on e3, and now the knight goes to the center, to the side of the board, but controlling the central squares, and the pawns and the knight work in beautiful unison to stop white from entering the camp. Fantastic chess here shown by Gukesh, and a nice understanding also, and it doesn't seem like Hari would be able to make progress here. And with this, I think Gukesh, Harikrishna has agreed to a draw. Gukesh did offer a draw, and the players have agreed. With this, Gukesh takes the first place in the tournament, and also he manages to top the FIDE Circuit leaderboard, moving to 87 points, which is an important moment for him. In Chennai, Gukesh has played fantastic chess at the Olympiad as well as at this tournament. It seems like whenever tournaments happen on his home ground, he's able to rise up to the occasion and show the best chess that he plays. The arbiter wants them to not analyze at the table because behind you see Arjun and Sanan are still playing their game and they do not want to be disturbed there. But what a fight this was. Although a very positional game and a queenless middle game, yet you could sense the tension that was in the air, where Harikrishna was pressing, Gukesh was on the defensive. While nothing truly spectacular or special happened in this game, I would consider this to be one of the most important games of Gukesh's career perhaps, because this may help him to make it to the candidates. He places the pieces, just touches the board like he always does, and folds his score sheet, and now is ready to call it a day.